The Chargers are $23 million over the salary cap headed into 2023. But what if I told you there was a way that they could get under the cap while still keeping their star players like Joey Bosa and Keenan Allen?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcasts from. And today, we're starting with how the Chargers can get under the salary cap without losing their star players like Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, to try to keep most of this nucleus together, and how realistic we think it is that they can get it done. And we have a plan from Brad Spielberger. It lays it out pretty nicely. There's a way they can get kind of well under the salary cap. But also, we have to talk about how the Chargers defensive coordinator search isn't over yet. Even after it had been reported that Derrick Ansley was going to be the guy and they planned on promoting him, there are a couple new names in the circle of who is going to potentially be the Chargers defensive coordinator. Is it still Derrick Ansley's job to lose? And also, the Chargers made a big move, releasing their head trainer, guy who'd been around for 6 seasons. We're going to talk about why they would do that and if this could potentially, curb the Chargers' crazy injury woes. But we have to start, David, with a great article from Pro Football Focus from Brad Spielberger, getting the 5 teams way over the cap, under the cap, with a series of moves. And I think the biggest thing with these moves from Brad Spielberger, David, is he actually finds a way to get the Chargers $17 million under the cap, $17.9 million, so almost $18 million under the cap, without releasing guys like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, when for most of the offseason, it's felt like they've had to lose one of those guys to get in a good cap position.
Yeah, I definitely did feel that way. I know that we've done a couple of shows about, hey, are the Chargers going to have to cut Keenan Allen? Are the Chargers going to have to move on or somehow get out from underneath Joey Bosa's contract? And reading this article, something we came across, it lines it out pretty nicely. A really good plan to not only get under the cap, but actually have some operating spending cash to be able to take care of some other moves that you need to this offseason as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is just not only, being cap compliant by the time you need to be, but also hopefully being able to retain, some of your internal free agents, and hoping that you would still have enough space to kind of find the outlier pieces that they were able to last year, right? The guys like
Yeah.
Kyle Van Noy and Morgan Fox and Bryce Callahan, like, even
Yes.
with small deals, you need some space to kind of fill those, and plug those holes.
Yep.
And this is how they did it. They restructured Joey Bosa's contract, gives him $15 million this season. They released Matt Filer for another $6.5 million, something we've talked about almost seems like a foregone conclusion at this
Oh
point.
yeah.
Restructuring Khalil Mack again, freeing up another $10 million, and then also restructuring Sebastian Joseph Day and extending Austin Eckler to save another almost $5 million. And I think the Austin Eckler extension would probably be 1 year, move the money around a little bit. You don't necessarily have the, long-term answer there, and I doubt it would be a 3 or 4 year extension. But the result of that, $17.9 million under the cap. But the problem is, David, is when you do something like this, you're kicking the can down the road. I mean, I think when you're looking at why the Chargers would do it, right? I mean, it's to keep this core nucleus together for another run here. You traded a 2nd-round pick for Khalil Mack, right? You don't want to give up on that yet. Like, Joey Bosa is by far your probably best defender when he's healthy and producing for you out there. And cool, and then also you have someone like Keenan Allen. We know how important he is, and we also know that the Chargers feel like they need to add to that position group, not take away from it. But I think the biggest things here, and kind of the landmines they stay away from here, are not restructuring JC Jackson, because that's a 5-year contract. They could have done it. But as it stands right now, after this upcoming 2023 season, JC Jackson doesn't have any more guaranteed money. So they can get out of it. If they had restructured it, or if they do restructure it, then it's going to make it much harder to cut him, because all of that savings that you would get restructuring is just going to be spread out over the last 3 years of the contract, which means more dead cap in the future. Right now, they can basically get out of it after next year. And the same with Keenan Allen. I love Keenan Allen. I understand people saying restructure Keenan Allen, but as of right now, you can get out of that contract after 2023 for just about nothing. 20 plus million in savings, less than $3 million in dead cap. That is the out that Tom Telesco built in. So I think that is the one place where in this, David, they stayed away from that so they would still give themselves flexibility on those guys after this year.
And that's a plan that I co-sign with. I think that's the way that this should go. If this is, in fact, the groundwork or the skeleton of the plan that you're trying to go in to this offseason with to get yourself compliant, I still feel like Keenan Allen is still incredibly productive. I think we saw that when he was healthy. He still commands an unbelievable amount of respect. He's still a monster on third downs. He's very productive. This is not the time to do anything with Keenan Allen's contract one way or another. I don't know if there's an extension there yet, but you want to protect that ripcord there. And then for J.C. Jackson, him coming back from a very significant injury, an injury that could unfortunately alter how his career goes going forward. This is, incredibly serious. We don't know how he's going to come back from that. Obviously, we're all hoping that he comes back and he is the Mr. INT that we all saw the first few years of his NFL career. But that's the right way to do it. You want to stay away from those two contracts, allow yourself that flexibility while still keeping some very, very important pieces. I mean, hey, we wanted to see Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on the field at the same time over the course of an entire season, not just about 4 quarters. So I'd like to see that a lot more. And I think this plan right here allows that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the 4 games those two were healthy together last year, Khalil Mack had 5 sacks, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, he had less than that the other, 12 games last year,
Yeah.
13 games. So it made a big difference when they were out there. And by doing it this way, let's be honest, I mean, you're putting a hell of a lot of stock into Keenan Allen's health and Khalil Mack's health and Joey Bosa's health, right? Like you're banking on these dudes coming back, which is inherently risky.
It
And I
is.
do think the other thing that kind of goes against this is just Tom Telesco's history. And that's what
Yeah.
kind of, I think, makes us hesitant to say, like, obviously this is what you do and this is what's going to happen, just because before they restructured Khalil Mack last season, they hadn't done it really ever, at least not to any big significant contracts for the most part. So it's nice to see them going in that direction without totally mortgaging the future. But Tom Telesco hates dead cap, and this is something that's created because of that. So even though it's nice to see this, David, I mean, we still have to see the Chargers start knocking off some of these moves and getting closer to it, because as of right now, these guys are still kind of on the block as far as who could potentially be going. But we now see, okay, well, if they want to keep this group together, it might be a little risky, but you can keep this core nucleus together if you really want to.
They can. And I think just about a month ago, it just seemed like it was very unrealistic. It just felt like one of the guys that you grew up watching, one of the guys you grew up loving to see them do their thing on the field was going to have to go and wear a different uniform. And hey, that still could happen. We don't
Yeah.
know. There's about 3 weeks for the Chargers to have to start making those moves and start to get compliant before the start of the new league year. So we're going to
Yeah.
see how they handle it. But I think this Chargers team right here is still close. And I don't think the right move here is to get rid of these guys. I know Joey Bosa's had a lot of injury concerns, but when he is on the field and he is right, he is one of the best defenders in the NFL. I truly, truly believe that. And Keenan Allen still very friendly to Justin Herbert. And like we talked about, I don't think the best thing to do here is to take Keenan Allen away from Justin Herbert. You need Keenan Allen there for that safety blanket and then add some real speed to really honestly get the best out of Keenan Allen. I mean, you think he's open now. Imagine what it's going to be like when someone is able to stretch the field and really open things up underneath. Keenan Allen's going to eat all day long.
It definitely plays right into his skill set. And I mean, even last year when they didn't have that threat, I mean, on a per game basis, he was dominant. And that
Yep.
was great to see that he still has that. But like, I think with both these positions too, I mean, you're one of these stars away from feeling really, really bad about the, depth of that position. Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel great going into this season with Mike Williams and Josh Palmer. I don't feel great going into the season with Khalil Mack and Chris Rumpf. Because guess what? Last year, we saw those combinations a lot, and it wasn't enough. The Chargers
No.
need to add to those groups. This is a way they can keep those star players. But we also did get some surprising news over the last couple of days, which is the Chargers' search for a defensive coordinator is still open, which we didn't necessarily think. Is Derrick Ansley still the guy, or can one of these up and comers, more young defensive minds, of course, with Brandon Staley looking for guys who are going to, take a few leaps and, kind of find that diamond in the rough. And we'll talk about a couple of those guys. And the Chargers getting rid of their athletic trainer, maybe turning a new page there, hoping to curb some of the worst injuries in the NFL. And we're going to get into that. But I do need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by Built Bar, my favorite protein bar. I'd say the best protein bar out there right now. And for me, it's because of the flavors. I know everyone just got through the holidays and a lot of people are still sticking to their New Year's resolutions. I hope you are. But if you're just dieting, can be really, really boring what your food, what the food is that you're having. When you get Built Bar, you're getting that treat. You're getting that feeling of having a candy bar, something that is going to feel like a cheat meal, but actually fits on your diet, because most of the bars have 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, while being packed with 17 grams of protein. They fit on pretty much any diet. They're definitely good for keto and diets like that as well. And they have great flavors. I mean, churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, double chocolate. They have all of the best flavors. And if you try them, you will find your favorite one. It can be tough. It's a hard decision. It's like catching a unicorn out in the wild. You're not supposed to get something that tastes this good and also fits on your diet, but that's what you can get with Built Bar. And now you can find them everywhere, including at Walmart, where you can go buy a 4-bar box, or you can go to Sam's Club and get a 13-bar box. Get flavors like brownie batter and thank me later, because if you get that 13-bar box, you will find one of your favorites. And right now, since you listen to this show, you can save some money online. If you go to builtbar.com, you can use the promo code LOCKEDON15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. All right, well, we talked about the Chargers salary cap. Now let's talk about some, controversy here, because the Chargers defensive coordinator search is still ongoing, even after Tom Pelissero said the Chargers were planning on making Derrick Ansley the defensive coordinator, promoting him from the secondary coach, and also promoting Tommy Donatel from the assistant secondary coach to the secondary coach and the defensive passing game coordinator. Now, things are a little bit more convoluted, because this is what came out from Ian Rappaport. For their vacant defensive coordinator position, the Chargers have interviewed Patriots defensive line coach DeMarcus Covington and University of Houston defensive coordinator Doug Belk, sources say. Covington also interviewed with the Cardinals. So, David, I don't know if Derrick Ansley wants to see this, but obviously, for multiple reasons, we were surprised that the Chargers moved so quickly in doing this, right? Pretty much as soon as Ronaldo Hill left, this was pretty much announced, and maybe not so fast, right?
Yeah, maybe not so fast indeed. I mean, it seems like we got to pay a little bit closer attention to exactly what Tom Pelissero is saying out there, because it said that he is they're expected to be those new coordinators.
They're planning on making Derrick Ansley, right? But the problem is you can't just plan for that because of certain rules. You have to actually let other people interview for the job, which if you're just going to promote your guy, those other people don't get that shot.
That's correct. So the NFL does have the Rooney Rule that does apply to the coordinator position as well. The Rooney Rule states that you must interview a minority candidate for that role.
An external minority candidate is the important thing, because obviously Derrick Ansley would be a minority candidate.
An external minority candidate. Sorry, let me be very specific there. So so that is part of this process. So it seems like that someone jumped the gun. I mean, somebody gave that information to Tom Pelissero that got out there a little bit quicker than probably intended, which is very abnormal for the Chargers organization. They're usually very tight-lipped. Sure. This stuff does not usually happen. So this was very surprising, very interesting to see that come out from that tweet from Ian Rappaport.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is like Tom Pelissero technically didn't do anything wrong, but if the Chargers have already made up their decision before opening up the coaching search to external candidates, that means they did something wrong, and that means you can get, judicial action by the NFL trying to come down on you punitively, and that's what you don't want, right? Teams get docked draft picks and things like that. I don't necessarily think this is going to rise to that level, and I mean, I think, another word for that is Derrick Ansley is the favorite for the defensive coordinator job, right? Because you have to at least give the other guys a chance, as they are, interviewing. The only two candidates that we know so far are both minority candidates, right? And both young up and coming guys that we'll talk about. But as I see it right now, though, David, even with this right now, they're complying with the Rooney Rule, all that stuff. I mean, to me at this point, I would still say Derrick Ansley is still the favorite, and it might still kind of play out exactly like we thought it would.
Yeah, honestly, that's the way I'm feeling too. I mean, I see these interviews coming out there, but I feel like there was a lot of truth in the intentions of the Chargers with them appointing Derrick Ansley as or supposedly planning
Right, because there
on
was also
having a
never an official statement, right?
right.
That's
The
the other thing. The
Chargers
Chargers
never
never
came
came
out
out
and
and said it,
right. They didn't confirm anything, so that nothing official has come down the pipeline. But I agree. I feel like Brandon Staley thinks very, very highly of both Derrick Ansley and Tommy Donatel. I think there's no secret about that. The players really love Derrick Ansley as well. So I do feel like after all the dust settles and these interviews are completed, the plan all along is going to be the plan that unfolds, which is Derrick Ansley as the defensive coordinator and Tommy Donatel as the secondary coach.
Yeah, and I think when you're doing kind of a total offensive overhaul, like I think you probably want to keep as much stability as you possibly can on the defensive side of things. I mean, I think
Yes.
if you bring in a defensive coordinator who's not, someone versed in what Brandon Staley's defense or the Vic Fangio defenses are trying to
Yeah.
do, I mean, I think that's just putting an extra learning curve
Just
on your
seems
team.
counterproductive. Yeah.
It does. I mean, at the same time, though, when we talked about it a few days ago, I said, hey, they probably should be interviewing outside candidates and getting outside perspectives and, not
Yeah.
just necessarily thinking that the best man for the job is the one that's inside your building. Make the search wider than that. So I'm glad that they're casting a wider net.
I mean,
It's
Ryan
worth
Ficken
bringing
is
these
the
dudes
perfect
in.
example as to why you should do that. I mean,
The
you go
Ryan Ficken
outside
theory.
of the organization and he comes in and he completely transforms the special teams unit from one of the worst in the league to literally one of the top 10 special team units in the league. So I
Yeah.
agree with that philosophy as well. You don't always want to have a bunch of yes men. You got to have some dissenting opinions out there.
And I think the other thing is too is Brandon Staley's trying to, make up for maybe some initial mistakes. And you don't want him
Yeah.
going down with the ship and keeping everyone just because, they were the guys he hired originally. And
Right.
now every, major coordinator position has been changed. And now at this point, we don't know who the defense coordinator is going to be, but it does at least, insinuate that the Chargers are out there giving guys a chances and trying to get it right this time, not being deterred by, getting it wrong the first time with Darius Swinton or Joe Lombardi, right? Or even Ronaldo Hill, who they let walk, right? They seem committed to trying to upgrade this position. And you
Yeah.
should be, going for other guys, including, a guy who has a pretty impressive resume and a guy who's rising up pretty quickly with DeMarcus Covington. He was
Yeah.
one of the guys mentioned. He also, did interview for the Arizona Cardinals defensive coordinator position under their new coach, Jonathan Gannon. So, like, this is a guy, coming from the Patriots, obviously, since 2017. That's a pretty nice, place to be coming up under maybe one of the best defensive minds the NFL has ever seen in Bill Belichick.
Yep.
And this is a guy that, definitely has the credibility to be in the running for the spot.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a coach since 2012 when he was a defensive graduate assistant at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. So that's 11 years of experience. And so he rose through the college ranks, and he was there till about 2019, and then he joined the Patriots, and he's been with the Patriots coaching at the NFL level since then. So
Since
he does have,
2017.
yeah, since 2017. So he has a good inventory of experiences at different spots, and seems like he's definitely a fast rising coach, 33 years old, and getting a bunch of defensive coordinator opportunities here, which is great. I mean, this is where the league is going to. A lot of younger coaches, a lot of young head coaches out there. So seeing more guys getting more opportunities, it's a great thing to see.
And with DeMarcus Covington, so yeah, I mean, he was in the collegiate ranks, but the only NFL team he's been with so far is the Patriots after 2
Right.
years with Ole Miss in 2017. But I mean, that's, 6 seasons as a Patriots coach and
Yeah.
also rising through that organization, obviously assuming he would have still been their coach this season.
Yeah.
And a lot of promotions, right? Comes in as assistant in
Yeah, very young.
2017 with less than 2 years. He was the outside linebackers coach, coaching the edge rushers. And then the next year, he's already kind of bumped up again to the defensive line coach. So, I mean, he's been definitely moving up that ladder, but it does seem
Meteoric
like
rise.
with the Chargers, though, they do seem to love themselves some secondary coaches, right?
Yes,
Almost
they do.
everyone in big positions for the Chargers defense, whether it was Ronaldo Hill or Derrick Ansley or Tommy Donatel now getting a promotion, or even Doug Belk, who we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
all have, extensive history as either playing safety or, corner themselves or coaching that position extensively for sure. And that is something that DeMarcus Covington, as far as his resume, something that's missing as far as the common denominator from some of those other guys. But Doug Belk is a very, very interesting candidate. The one thing DeMarcus Covington has on his side is he coaches at the NFL level.
Yes.
Right. Doug Belk, it would be a big jump to go from Houston and come straight to the NFL level. But another, a 33-year-old defensive coordinator potentially with DeMarcus Covington, I don't think there's any surprise there. that Brandon Staley's, kind of in his own words, trying to find the next him, the guy who's been flying under the radar
That's
and
right.
deserves a chance, even though he hasn't been in the league super long. But Doug Belk, very, very fast riding, almost meteoric rise he's had at the collegiate level and has led some really, really good units. So we're going to talk about that and why the Chargers felt the need to move on from their athletic trainer of 6 seasons and someone who'd been with the team for 24 seasons. We're going to talk about that after this, but I do need to tell you guys about Ultimate Football GM. I've told you guys before about Ultimate Football GM, and you've heard me talk about this mobile gaming app, and I can't tell you guys how much fun I've had competing, especially with the other Locked On NFL hosts. We did a competition. Shout out to Locked On Steelers and Chris Carter for taking it down. I'll be coming for revenge in 2023. But that is a great thing about Ultimate Football GM, guys. It's a game that you can play with all your friends. And bragging rights. I know fantasy bragging rights are great during the season. Football's over. So unless you're getting into fantasy XFL, this is a great way to keep football as one of the main things. You can keep your fantasy group chat alive and all become Ultimate Football GMs and take it to the next level. Anybody can manage, players and things like that. Now manage a whole team. Now draft. Now hire the right coaches, hire the right coordinators, all in a very realistic world. It takes a little bit more. So get your friends at a Ultimate Football GM group. We'll be getting one for our Locked On Chargers listeners next year when we start the season. But all you guys have to do is go to ultimate-gm.com to find it. And right now, since you listen to the show, Locked On Chargers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the app, just go to ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Well, let's get to this next prospect, David, for the Chargers defensive coordinator position. And I think that it's very telling that the Charger, trying to turn over kind of undiscovered leaves and, trying to get the next best thing. At least that's kind of what I take away from this. Obviously, DeMarcus Covington has other opportunities, right? So he's not someone that's really flying under the radar that much. But Doug Belk, on the other hand, that's a pretty interesting one, David. I mean, taking someone straight from the collegiate ranks. He's been the University of Houston defensive coordinator for a couple of years, wore a lot of hats there. But another 35-year-old coach who's interviewing for the Chargers defensive coordinator job, that is a big leap.
It is a big leap. I mean, going straight to the NFL with and not just to the NFL. You're not going to a position coach. You're getting interviewed for a defensive coordinator position at the NFL. That's a gigantic jump. I mean, you don't really see that happen at all. So to see, that he's getting this type of interview bodes extremely well for his future and his prospects. But yeah, there's a lot of that experience that, that secondary experience here. You coached cornerbacks at West Virginia, 2017 to 2018, was the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach in 2019 at Houston. And then he's been the head coach and associate defensive coordinator and associate head coach and defensive coordinator the last couple of years at Houston. So he does have experience as a defensive coordinator calling the plays. And obviously they think of him in very high regard, very high esteem, having him as the associate head coach as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it just seems like they've been giving him new titles pretty much every season to keep this dude around because he's been going through them pretty quickly, right? I mean, starts off as an assistant, coaching the secondary, then they make him co-defensive coordinator and he's sharing the duties with someone else. Then it's like, okay, well, now you're the associate head coach. Now we're just going to make you the defensive coordinator by yourself because you've earned that, right? And also had stints, with even in Alabama and Nick Saban coaching their secondary and dudes like Minka Fitzpatrick. Then goes to West Virginia where they lead the Big 12 in interceptions in his time there. Then he goes to Houston, and in Houston he's been really good too. And I mean, his position groups and his defense have played well under him. I mean, it's a reason this dude is probably, if he's not in the NFL levels, probably going to be, a defensive coordinator or maybe even a head coach of another college team pretty soon if he keeps his meteoric rise. I mean, last year just by itself, Houston, not a big school, right? Not even a Power 5 school, 19th in points per game in the country, 6th in yards allowed, 5th in sacks last year, and has a specialty in the secondary, right? That's one thing that Brandon Staley obviously loves, and another tie to keep him, kind of in this race.
Well, and that Houston team also generated a first-round pick and a second-round pick, coming from the defensive side. So, like, that's a pipeline already kind of over the last couple of years. That's a pipeline getting started from Houston to the NFL. So that means they're generating NFL quality players that are ready to go.
Yeah, and doing it with less, right? I mean, anytime
less
you're talking
resources,
about
less everything. Yeah.
right, a group of 5 school like that, you don't get the same sort of recruits. Like Houston has
Oh,
been
no.
pretty good at recruiting, but there's also just been this, you know, obvious want from Brandon Staley to keep these relationships open with a lot of college coaches,
No
right?
doubt.
That's what Derrick Ansley was. He was the defensive coordinator for Tennessee
Yep.
when he came in to be the Chargers secondary coach, right? And that's where you would normally see it, right? The Tennessee defensive coordinator is coming in to be the Chargers secondary coach. So
Right.
for a Houston defensive coordinator to come up and just be the Chargers defensive coordinator would be a gigantic leap there.
Huge.
But
Yeah.
when you see what this dude's track record has been the last few years, it's,
Yeah. Makes
undoubtedly
sense.
super impressive, right?
Yep.
Definitely a dude you want to bring in that room. I mean, the more
Yeah.
smart defensive minds you can bring together, right? I mean, I
The
think that
more, the
there's nothing
merrier.
that can kind of go bad from that. Will they give him a real chance, right? Are they doing this out of obligation or doing it because he has a real shot at it? That's the part we don't know because we still think
Yep.
Derrick Ansley is probably the leader there. But the Chargers did make another big time move along with, both coordinators now, special teams coordinator last year. The Chargers parted ways this week with head trainer Damon Mitchell, who had performed the job for 6 seasons and been with the organization for 24 years. Chargers will now have a new head trainer, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator in 2023 from Adam Schefter. David, I guess this isn't a big surprise. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of thought when Brandon Staley really, revamped the performance staff and, did that on the kind of performance staff and getting the guys ready for the season, took that as, okay, well, they're revamping that because of injuries, but it wasn't the athletic training staff, right? That's a different thing. That's the performance staff is the guys getting out there, stretching you, getting you ready, giving you the exercises and the conditioning and stuff like that. And then there's the training staff, which
Yeah.
can't, avoid ACL tears and things like that. But one thing, David, that's been inarguable when you talk about Chargers over the last 6-7 years, the first thing that comes up is injury bitten, right? And that's just been the case. And as much as there's no way you can put it on one guy like Damon Mitchell, like this is something I'm surprised wasn't already done, to be honest.
I completely agree. I don't know. Honestly, the timing of this is what's kind of very interesting to
It
me.
is.
I just thought this would be a move that would happen pretty much immediately, like on Black Monday. When you cut coaches the Monday after the season, that's when I expected that move to happen.
It's been
Because
weird for all the Chargers coaches, right? Like Joe
yeah,
Lombardi and Shane Day were quick, but then it was
yeah,
like the Ronaldo Hill thing happened and Michael Wilhoit, and it's just kind of been like a trickle down thing so far.
right. And I mean, hey, you look at it from a bird's eye view. I mean, it's wholesale changes. I mean, there is a lot of different people in the building, and I think specifically for this change here, one of the things that I guess kind of just goes off in my mind is the Keenan Allen setbacks for the hamstring injury, and like that's
Right.
just one of a few different examples of hey, obviously injuries are going to happen in the NFL, but you gotta you got to get guys back on the football field. I mean, and you got to have those timelines be realistic and make sure you're taking care of guys the right way. And I'm not saying that Damon Mitchell did not do that, but he was the head of that specific part of the organization. And so whenever you're not getting the type of results that you expect, the figurehead is always going to be the one that gets replaced. And hey,
Yeah.
this is all in an effort to get these guys back on the field faster so they can help contribute to the Chargers winning games. As you know,
Right.
there's 17 games and every single one of them are precious. So you want to get those main guys out there as much as you can.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's, something to be said. Okay, well, hey, last year we saw them have one of the biggest, the best injury seasons or lack
Yep.
thereof, that we've seen in a long time from the Chargers, and he deserves some credit for that. And it's not just a single person issue, right?
No, never.
At the same time, at a certain point, other teams are doing something better than you are, and I think that's a great point you make about guys just getting back on the field. You can't
Yeah.
always, prevent injuries, but it just
No.
seems like anytime we ever heard any kind of timeline for any Chargers injury, like it never played out that way.
Yeah,
And
even
even,
Joey Bosa
if
too.
it's
Right.
4 or 6 weeks, or in Joey Bosa 8 to 10 weeks, right? It always seems like it's 12 or 13 weeks.
Yeah.
You want to be cautious. You don't want to take these chances. But if the Chargers were putting, Keenan Allen back out there and he's kind of, re-aggravating that in the first game he comes back. Joey Bosa seems like he's kind of re-aggravating something. JC Jackson goes back out there when he feels like he's good to go, blows out his patellar tendon, right? Like it's too many things to think it's a coincidence. If I
Yeah.
was Dean Spanos, When I had all the money, what I would do is I would go try to find the teams who have had the least injuries and pay their people as much as they wanted.
Yeah, it's a
Go
copycat league, man.
overpay someone to come in and revamp your staff, right? Double what they're making right now. And that's the one thing, that rich owners can do, right?
Yeah.
And like with players and stuff like that, salary cap, you can't really gain too much from just being the rich dude. But like the one
Right.
thing you can do if you're the rich dude is you can pretty much spend whatever you want on coaches, right? And
Yeah,
if I was
on
the
the
Chargers,
staff, yeah.
knowing what the history has been, knowing that I'm one of the most snake bitten teams in the NFL, I'm going to find whoever's been doing it best, and I'm going to pay them double to leave that job.
Amen.
Besides that, I don't really know. We're not going to be breaking down athletic trainers on here, right?
No,
Like it's just
no.
the Chargers have to do their due diligence. We know they started doing things differently under Staley as far as recording all their performances, right, and trying to keep a running log of everything going on and not over stressing the players and things like that. But
Right.
last year it just didn't work. Guys were still getting injured, missing most of the season. It's always major players for the Chargers. They had
Yep.
the 7th most ACL tears since 2013. They had
Sheesh.
ended last season with the 7th most players on injured reserve with 15 when the season ended. Like it's been too long. And when it's guys like Bosa and Rashawn Slater and Josh Kelly and Jalen Guyton, Donald Parham, Austin Johnson, combined with other big names like Mike Williams, Keenan Allen missing 4+ games, like
Yep.
something's got to change. And even though it's not all Damon Mitchell's fault, right, you need somebody new to take a different look at how the Chargers are doing things. And they probably have, honestly, for a very, very long time. But that is going to do things for today's show. Appreciate you guys joining us, making us your first listen today. Thank you guys also for bearing with us yesterday when we weren't able to get a show. Obviously, we want to go Monday through Friday. My grandma passed away. Sucks, missed the show, but happy to be back here with you guys today. So shout out to my grandma Judy, who, even in the Chargers domination live days was commenting on every post and, talking about her bearded grandson and just embarrassing me in front of everyone. I love you, Grandma. Thank you for all your support and truly being my number one biggest fan 7 years ago when I was terrible at this. Don't go back and watch those videos. But that is going to do things for today's show. Make sure you guys never miss the show. Go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. It's Mock Draft Monday on Monday, and we want to talk about some very exciting prospects like Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, 2 guys recently linked to the Chargers. Want to talk about some more exciting offensive weapons. But till then, you can also find the show every day on our social media. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, and the show's Twitter at Locked On LAC. You can also find us on the Locked On Chargers Facebook page and at Locked On Chargers on Instagram. If you guys want to call into the voicemail line for next week's mailbag, you can do that at 323-524-7924. Leave a 30-second question, and we'll do our best to get it on the show. But we'll be back with you guys on Monday for Mock Draft Monday, talking about more exciting options the Chargers could target in round 1. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.